STX lighting panel.
So it'll be the same one downstairs too.
Correct.
They are independent, they're not interconnected at all.
So right here is a technical service phone number. You can call them during business hours. They will help walk you through any programming or troubleshooting issues that may arise. This is live in here, so always be aware of that. These are switching modules in here. You can buy optional dimming modules. You can hook up switches, motion sensors, photo eyes, which we have at least one switch hooked up to this one, which was talking about earlier. But in the most part, and there is a battery. If you have issues, there is like a CR, one of the bigger watch cell batteries that's back behind this panel.
All right.
Okay, so if you're having issues with losing memory, different things going on, during a power outage,
Yeah.
there's a battery back there that may need to be replaced. Alright, so basically, main menu, hit the enter button to illuminate it, and once again to get into the different settings. So system settings, and we'll go through all of these here in a second. Scenarios, groups, schedules, holidays, inputs, outputs, presets, dimming, which there are no dimming cards in here now, system tools. So we'll go through all of them briefly here. So system settings, you get to the highlighted, whatever you'd like to view, and hit the open button. So date time preferences, if you go into that, that would be how you want your date and time to appear on the screen. We're in the central US time zone. It'll show AM, PM, it'll show month, date, year, it'll show the military or terry format if that's what you'd like. Escape will always get you back to the last screen you're in. So here's set date and time. Again, once hit enter, you could change this. If, for instance, that battery were to die after a few years and you do lose power and it loses some of that information, you would have to go back in and reset it. After you make any changes, you always need to go down to save and then hit enter. Okay. Astro clock or astronomical clock setting. That tells us where we are longitudinally and latitudinally to help with sunrise sunsets, used in scheduling. Rochester is our closest major city that's in the menu, so you could, I suppose, look up our exact longitude and latitude and enter that in if wanted. So open and close times, that's more for a retail environment, but you could actually set your open and close times and then set all your scheduled events, and if your close and or open times were to change, you could just change that once and it would make changes to your entire schedule. Okay, but it's more of a retail. Panel name, you've only got 2 panels in this building, but if you had a larger facility with multiple panels, you could name your panels just for ease of use. Okay, and again, you just go in there, this one's named downstairs, that's the default, but you could change it with the keypad. After hours sweep, Rich mentioned we did have one set up here, I believe, but that would be, you could set it up once or multiple times through a night, and it would shut everything off, or shut certain groups or individual relays off. The only problem is if you have cleaners or people in the building doing something, it will shut them off on them. And we only have the one switch override up here for the lobby lights, so the rest of the lights, you'd have to know where this was to come in here to turn them on. A blank alert, that would be on an after hours sweep event. It would actually flash the lights beforehand to allow somebody to know if they were aware of what this panel could do, that hey, the lights are about to go out. So power on setting, that would be in the event of a power failure. You could have certain relays do certain things when the power is restored. Right now it would go to last set. but you could have it do, if you wanted it to do something special or different, you could do it here in the power on setting. And the relays are right there, you just go down and then auxiliary outputs. Again, you would just select one and tell it to come on. On a repower, go to on or go to off. Relay function, that would be your relays that are in there. You would name it, so you give your function a name, so when you're looking at it, something that makes sense. And this would be if you wanted it to blink, not to blink. Couple other, I honestly I never use that, but there's a couple other options in there that I'm honestly not familiar with. And we can read about those, and I can give you more information about that if you want.
Here, leave a book here for it though?
Yeah, yep.
Alright.
This one is your book. I took it from the downstairs room. So idle timeout settings, that's just, apologize. That's just on when your screen here goes back to the main menu and when your backlight shuts off. So right now I think default's like 2 minutes. So it'll sit here for 2 minutes before it goes back to the main menu and your backlight shuts off. You can change that to shorter or longer if you wanted. For instance, if you're in a more of a public area and you password protected it,
Yeah.
you might want it to go back to the main menu after 15 seconds or something. Here's the backlight setting. So 2 different ones for the idle timeout and the backlight. So clock adjustment. This is something you might need. So these are electronic clocks. If your voltage is a little bit higher or a little bit lower, it's going to affect the speed of the clock. So you will notice, now this one says, so 220. Okay, so it's about a minute fast. They were running a little bit slow last time I was here, so I did speed them up. So if you noticed that they're running faster or slower, you can go in here with the clock adjustment and slow them down. Right now I've got it on 127 seconds, speeding it up, which is the maximum.
Yeah.
But we picked up a few minutes since I was here last week, was what, maybe 2 weeks ago? Okay, so I'm gonna say 110 seconds and save. Okay, so that just slowed it down a little bit. Factory default, that would be to reset this back to the factory defaults, and you would lose all of your programming that's in here.
Yeah.
And these, and what you guys are using it for is pretty basic. You know, it's time clock,
Yeah.
and you got the one switch, and I think that's about all we got, right? And the sweep, the after-hour
Up
sweeps.
here on this one, that's all it is.
Yeah.
All the lights and there's one relay to go out of place.
Yep. So now we'll get into more of the programming. So there's a couple of ways to program this. So scenarios, it'll give you 2 options. It'll give you an outdoor scenario or an indoor scenario. You don't have to use either of these. It just helps you. Outdoor scenarios are typically astronomical in nature. Turn parking lot lights on at sunset, turn them off at 10 o'clock, or turn them off at sunrise, or whatever. Indoor scenarios are typically more of a time clock. Turn on at 6 a.m., shut off at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. type thing. So that's all that will help you with. You can still do all of those same things without even using either of those. But that's it's just pointing you in the direction. So groups, this is something that you may someday want to adjust or change. So you've got 8 relays in this panel. You can create a group with 2 to 8 relays in it, and you can name it whatever you'd like. So right now we have 1 group. You could take relay 2 and relay 5 and create another group and call it whatever you'd like, and so on and so forth. The reason you'll create groups is later on doing your programming, you can just, instead of saying I want relay 1, 3, 5, and 7 to come on at a certain time, shut off at a certain time, you say I want group number 2, which you've named, whatever makes sense, to do what we just talked about. So that's groups. Schedules, that's exactly like we talked about, it's setting a schedule by time. On at this time, off at that time. We've got schedule number 1, which is 6 to 8, which is on at 6 a.m., off at 8 a.m. Schedule number 2 is inside off, which I think is that sweep we talked about. Again, if you wanted to set up another schedule, you just go in here, create the name, come down here, say which relay or groups you want to control. We'll talk about priority here in a little bit, and then save it. So holidays, you can have this, have different programs during the holidays. So again, a retail environment, and it has all of the major holidays in there. You can pick them all or pick some of them, or split them up. You know, Christmas Eve we're open limited hours, Christmas Day we're not open at all. So that's basically what holidays are. So inputs, that would be if you had inputs coming into your panel, which we have one switch. You could have motion sensors, multiple switches, multiple button keypads. All of those would be inputs that would need to get wired into a panel, into this panel. You'd have to tell it where you landed it, and then you'd have to tell it what you wanted it to do. Whether you wanted it to, even though you landed it on input number 7, you want it to run relay number 2. You can do that. Or you want it to run relays 1, 2, and 5. That's all programming in here. Again, it walks you through it. It's not going to let you do anything to break it. It's like every computer nowadays. They're pretty intuitive. Outputs. It's got 2 auxiliary outputs. If you needed it to signal your building control system when that light switch out in the other room was pressed, you could program it to do that. Presets. So that would be if you had multi-button controls throughout your facilities. Preset number 1 turns on relays 1 and 3. Preset number 2 turns on relays 2 and 4. Whatever you'd like to do with that. Again, unless there's an expansion or remodel, you're pretty much set up how you want it. So that's, you probably won't be doing anything with the presets. Dimming, we've got no dimming modules in here. But again, if we did, this is how you can set up some of your dimming controls. System tools, okay? So the only thing that's really helpful in system tools is, I'll go back to that. So manual controls, you can turn things on and off through the keypad. You can dim things up and down if we had dimmers. You can shut groups on and off. You can turn schedules on and off and things like that. Okay. System status. That's when you can look to see, you know, if your relays are closed or open. What your groups are doing, what your inputs are doing. This is more diagnostic type things. If you're having an issue or if you're doing a remodel and you need to figure out, okay, I got a set of low voltage wires coming in here. Which switch do those go to? Well, you can have somebody operating the switch. You'll see the little light up that says, okay, that's the switch in the main hallway. Sunrise and sunset times, again, that's astronomical. Okay, it'll tell you what they should be. You can see how accurate that is. Dimmer inputs, again, if you had dimmers. Name, memory status, I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with what that is. There's your outputs, your inputs. There's nothing right now. I don't remember which input that switch is landed on, but if they were operating that switch over there, you'd see, and if it was on input number 7, you'd see that little circle fill in to dark. So again, troubleshooting type or diagnostic type functions are in system status. And if you do have an issue and you call the 800 number, they might ask you to go into system status. Okay, tell me if that is lit or not. Maybe you got some lights that aren't working. that are on relay number 7, hey, is relay number 7, is the circle dark or not? If it's dark, that means the relay's closed or it should be closed. It's being told to be closed anyways. Save and restore programs. There's a spot for a card. You can put a card in here and save your program. This is a pretty simplistic program. I don't know that that's necessary. And if something were to happen, or maybe this whole panel were to fail, you need to put a new one in, you could put the card in the new one and download it. That would be more if you had a facility system and you had a number of these networked together, and they're a lot more complex in the programming. You can get this is an 8-circuit panel, you can get up to 24 circuits, so larger panels, more programming, so on and so forth. All right, so priority and masking. So priority is if you have multiple commands for a group or a relay. Let's say you had it to shut off at 6 a.m. and to shut off if you had a photo eye, and to shut off when it receives so much light. Which one does it do first? So you'd give one priority over the other one. Maybe you'd want to get, and there's low, medium, and high priority. So you can get into a big cascading effect on what has more priority over the other. Yeah, but again, with the program we have, if you ever get into something where you want to do something like that, the 800 number on the back, call Stanek, call Chris or Andy or myself. We can help walk you through that. I've rarely had to use that. The only times I've had is when you've got a photo eye contradicting a time event. Which one do you want it to follow? So that's basically what input and input priority. Input masking, and not 100% sure what input masking is. I think it's just you can kind of have it ignore certain things at certain times. Schedule priority, same thing. You got 2 different scheduling events. It's telling me to do this schedule saying go off, this schedule saying go on. Which one do you want to be the more important? But again, we're pretty simple here. Access control, if you want to give it a password, you can. And then you'll need that password to get into it. Diagnostics, here's a few more. If you call the 800 number with issues, they might ask you to go into here. Master panel is on. Secondary panel, if both these panels were networked together, you'd see the status of that one right there, but they are not. Relay communication, all of your relays are online, meaning they're plugged in and functioning. Because this panel was sold with 8 relays, you can buy this panel and only install 3 relays. Or you can buy a 24 circuit panel, only install 9 relays. So it would say, it'd show you 1 through 9 online, the rest of them not, because they're not installed. Some of this auxiliary stuff is not found because you have nothing hooked up to it. Update firmware. Again, if you were having major issues, the factory may want you to update firmware. They would either show you a website to go to and download the newest firmware onto a card and stick it in here and update it, or they might even mail you one. But again, in the 7, 8, 9 years that I've been dealing with these, I've never had to do that. Controller version, again, that's the factory might ask you that. There is a version of software that is downloaded into this. Relay version, again, the relays that are in this panel. It would be less important with the switching relays as the dimming relays. Maybe you're having some dimming issues and it's an older dimmer that doesn't dim LEDs very well. You look at that and then say, oh, you've got an old dimmer, you're trying to dim LEDs, you need to fix that. A reboot system is exactly what it says, it reboots the system. Okay. That is pretty much it.
What's the most common problem you have with them?
Honestly, the only problem I had ever, and it was another standard job, after power loss, they lost their program. And I went back and reprogrammed it a couple of times, and I'm like, there's something obviously going in. It was a newer panel. There's something going on here. Well, there's the battery. So we put a new battery in it and we fixed it.
Alright,
So.
automatically adjust for like daylight savings time?
Yep, and you can turn that on and off, but it is turned on right now for daylight savings.
Right.
The biggest thing you're gonna probably wanna watch for the next few weeks is how accurate your time is.
Yep,
And you slow down or speed up that clock.
okay.
So like I said, I got the downstairs one maxed out on speed 2, and I looked at that earlier. That is a couple of minutes ahead. So we can go down there and slow that one down a little bit too. And what you'll notice is if your lights are scheduled, I think, to come on at 6 a.m. up here and shut off at 8 a.m., well, they're gonna come on at 6:02. And whatever time your employees are showing up, they're gonna be like, hey, the lights aren't on when you're here. Well, first thing you wanna do is come here and check this, see how accurate this is. Because if that clock gets out of adjustment, it's gonna adjust, it's gonna affect all of your schedules.
Is this connected to our building automation at all, or just?
I do not believe it is.